D-Spirit. Hello once again, friends and enemies. My name is Toxy. Let's get into it. Near the end of May, I discovered a new card game. New, like 2021 new. D-Spirits. Card game of the century. D-Spirits succeeded its Kickstarter back in, I believe, August of 2021, and is a really good example of an independent card game not made by a big company. Now, before we get any further, I want to say, and I mean this in the most endearing of ways, nothing about this following sentence is mean, D-Spirits is really dumb. The entire mantra of the game seems to be that no card can be overpowered if every card is overpowered, which I personally think is a really good thing, and it gives the game a really nice feel of you are always doing something crazy. It's also nice that it seems like the creators of the game really wanted it to be something where the player has more choice than the deck. If that makes any sense? Does that make sense? I don't know. All that is to say that I really love this game. I fell in love with it pretty fast. Got some cards to test it out, played it, and then yeah, that's it. I love the game. It's a monster taming game just like Digimon or Pokemon, and that's really it. It doesn't really play like those games, but we'll get into that in just a bit. Without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the cards that you'll be looking at. First up, we got spirit cards. These are going to be your squad deck. These are going to be the main monsters that you play with. Underneath the spirit's name, on the left-hand side of the card, are going to be the spirit's types. Now, as you can see, the types are just these little pictures, but there is a really easy to access guide to, which picture represents which type. But in the text, when you read the name of a type, I think it's pretty easy to assume which type that is. But that being said, I do think it could benefit a little bit from just having reminder text of the picture next to the type name. Down in the bottom right-hand corner of the card, you'll find your spirit's attack and endurance, as well as under both of those numbers, the stat boost. Stat boosts, I think, are also self-explanatory. You gain a boost in your attack or your endurance depending on which creature you're attacking or enduring against, and it'll show you that little type picture next to the stat boost. Up in the upper right-hand corner of the spirit card, you'll find your spirit's SP, their spirit points. This is the amount of damage you will take when your spirit dies. And under that, you can see the rarity meter, which isn't really needed for the card game, but just shows you how rare the card is. Next up, we've got your signals and signs cards. These cards are going to make up your support deck, which is a separate deck from your squad deck, which we'll talk about when we get into gameplay. Each of these cards will have an effect. They act like your spells in the game, but they are played directly from the hand. The most important thing to note is up next to the name of the card, whether or not the card has a lightning bolt. If the card does have a lightning bolt, it can be activated on your opponent's turn if you'd like. If it doesn't have a lightning bolt, it can only be activated on your turn. The only other thing to pay attention to with signals and size cards is a little limit indicator right under the name. This bar indicates the maximum amount of that single card that you can have in your support deck, and that number varies from card to card. There are some other type of cards like realm cards and support cards, but for the basics, we're just going to take a look at these two cards. These are the most basic cards of your decks. Pretty simple and easy breakdown, not a lot to these cards going on, which I think works in the game's favor pretty well. Let's go ahead and take a look at how the game plays. Alright, here we are at the D-Spirits battlefield, and while I don't have a playmat currently, this is how our D-Spirits field is going to be set up. Over here, we've got your squad deck. Your squad deck is made up of your D-Spirits. Over here, we've got your support deck made up of your signals and signs cards and support cards and other cards like that. And then up in this area, we would have a side deck that you can have to swap out cards in your decks between games, and some cards activate from the side deck. Over here above your squad deck, we have the D world. This is where your D-Spirits will go when they are destroyed or after a signal or science card is used or something like that. Here we have the battle scene. This is where you're going to place your D-Spirits, and you can only have up to 4 D-Spirits in this zone at a time. Back here is your support zone. This is where you're going to be playing all of your support cards. And then up here in the middle of the field between your field and your opponent's field is the realm zone, where you would put realm cards. Your squad deck can have a minimum of 15 spirits and a maximum of 20 spirits, and your support deck can have a minimum of 10 cards and a maximum of 20 cards. If you have a side deck, your minimum can be 1 and your maximum is 20. Each player starts the game by deciding how many SP they're going to have, which is going to be their health value. A standard game generally has 5,000, but you can choose how much you'd like. So let's start the game. First, we're going to draw our hand of 7 cards to start the game. You can choose between each deck how much cards you're going to draw from them. So for this example, I'm going to draw 4 cards from my squad deck and 3 cards from my support deck. A little messy there. Now, during our main phase of our turn, there are a couple things that we can do. Number 1, we can summon a D-Spirit. Now, you only get 1 regular summon per turn, but if you have a Super D-Summon, which can be activated by a special ability, you can Super D-Summon as many times as you want per turn, as long as you aren't going over the field limit. Next up, if we'd like to, we can play any support cards to help buff our D-Spirits or debuff our opponent's D-Spirits, or anything in between. Next up is the attack phase, the battle phase, if you will, and we can choose to attack our opponent directly, or if they have a spirit on the field, we can attack their spirit. If we are the first person to go, we do not get to attack. If we attack our opponent directly, they are going to lose SP based on our D-Spirit's power, or attack. If we attack our opponent's D-Spirit and that D-Spirit gets destroyed, our opponent is going to take the SP value on the top right-hand corner of their spirit card. If our opponent's spirit has more endurance than our spirit's attack power, they can choose to endure, which means their spirit won't die, but also that the endured spirit cannot change its battle position or attack during our opponent's next turn. Once we are done, we pass our turn, and at the start of our next turn, we can choose to draw from either deck. If you feel like your draw wasn't sufficient, you can pay 500 spirit points to draw once more from either deck. If all of your D-Spirits are in the D world, you can do a squad recharge, where you pay half of your remaining SP to go ahead and bring your squad deck back up to fruition. If a spirit has been on the field for at least 1 turn, or if it was super D-summoned, you can do a soul exchange, which can only be done once per turn before the battle step. In a soul exchange, you take the spirit on the field, return it to your hand, and replace it with a different spirit in your hand. A player loses when they hit 0 SP. And there you have it. That's all D-Spirits. Pretty fun game in my opinion, but how would I rate this game? First off, let's talk about accessibility. Getting this game is kind of hard. Because it is a new game and because it is an independently run game, cards are not released that often, and the problem with this is that other card games have taught us to be impatient, which kind of sucks. And I think if you start playing a game like D-Spirits or Flesh and Blood, it's really good at teaching you to keep your patience in check while you're waiting for these cards. That being said, since these cards are so few and far between currently, it's kind of hard to get your hands on them without spending more money than you would like to. Generally speaking, to spend the least amount of money on a starter deck, you would want to monitor the D-Spirits website to see when their starter decks come back in stock. Otherwise, you can be spending upwards of $30 to $40 for a single starter deck. Therefore, it makes it much easier just to wait for the store to get it back in stock, the D-Spirits online store to get the cards back in stock. They sell their decks for $5 each, and I think there's like a $10 shipping or something, so it's, you know, regular deck price at that point. Booster boxes, like with a lot of other games, generally stay around the $100 range. And getting singles kind of fluctuates because, once again, this card game is kind of hard to get your hands on right now. So I would say wait a little while longer until there's more cards out there in circulation. As of currently June of 2022, there's not that many, so it's kind of, you know, sparse. Other than that though, if you don't have the money to play this game but you would like to right now, much like with Buddy Fight, if you were to purchase Tabletop Simulator, or if you already have Tabletop Simulator, there is a D-Spirits add-on for Tabletop Simulator, which I would recommend if you would like to play this game. Other than that, the game keeps itself very fun and simple. Games can go by very fast if you use like the standard spirit points, but I think giving your players the ability to choose how much health they have in the game gives them more agency to decide how long they want their games to run, which makes this a very good indicator of player choice in the game. I feel like this is also reflective in the cards a little bit. Cards are very varied in what they can do, and you can smash them together as much as you like. You can have a side deck if you'd like, and sometimes cards will activate from the side deck, and I think that's super interesting. Added on to player choice is the amount of cards that you draw from each deck for your starting hand, and even thereon, like, just deciding if you need a spell card or if you need a spirit card, rather than having to hope that you get the one that you need. And I think that also adds to the gameplay a little bit more. I'd also like to add in a couple things about the card game that I don't generally talk about with other card games, mainly just because this one is new and independently owned. The card stock for D-Spirits is amazing. It's a little bit thicker than regular card stock for other card games, so it doesn't feel like it's going to bend or get damaged all that much. Also, the packaging for the starter decks was really nice. The packaging itself is the deck box, and each starter deck came with not only the deck and a rule book, but also a pack of sleeves. Who does that? That's crazy cool. Also, on top of all that, the art is really good. I think all of the characters have a little bit of good, great charm to them. This is Knuckle Slice. He's my favorite. All of that being said and shoved into one tiny thing, I really like D-Spirits. I think it's really fun. I can't wait for there to be more cards out there so that this card game is a little bit more accessible, and it is growing in fan base as far as I've seen. So overall, I think I would rate D-Spirits an 8.5 out of 10. Super fun, super great game. I would definitely recommend you try getting into it if you can. That being said, thank you so much for watching, and let me know how you like D-Spirits. Does the game look interesting to you, or do you not like the fast-paced nature of the game? Do you not like how the game plays or the cards? Let me know, just so I can get your feedback. Aside from that, we are almost at 200 subscribers. We might be at 200 by the time that I upload this video, and thank you so much for that many people watching. That's absolutely insane to me. All right, that is it. I will see you next time, and until then, drink your water.